government functions and how government works. Our government, it is big and it is too bloated, but it's very complicated. And after being in the legislature now over a decade, I know where to go for different things in government, what the different agencies do, what their budgets are. I've now voted on 11 different budgets. Those kind of things are very important. If you were to just end up in the governor's office, not only would you have to bring in all sorts of people who are experts in all sorts of different areas, but where do you go find them? Where do you go get them? Where do you know to draw that expertise from? And when you're immersed in the legislative process and have done budgets and have worked on issues ranging from everything from education issues to environment to transportation, you have this vast experience that you bring with you. That's something very important to consider, God forbid, should it ever happen. But if you look at the people that have come from the Secretary of State's office unwillingly into governors, the ones that were very successful were the ones that brought with them a very big experience base.
I agree that, and I too, I'm in my second term in the legislature, and had the opportunity to see how that process works and how the budget works and what the priorities are in the state. And that's very helpful. As I mentioned in my opening, I worked on one of the cornerstones of the governor's package to reform government. So I understand how those things work. I still work in the private sector. Now, we're a citizen legislature. I don't feed my 5 kids off of the $24,000 a year that we get paid at the legislature. I continue to work and I counsel with CEOs and leaders of organizations on major issues. In fact, most business owners would tell you that their most important asset are their people. Well, I'm a personnel lawyer, and I've worked with them on how to manage those workplaces from Fortune 50 companies down to mom and pop shops. So I understand the needs of the private sector. I understand the workings of government, and I believe that when you look at it is an elephant in the room, and when I decided to run for this office, I couldn't hide that from my wife. I had to say, now listen, there is something about this office that you need to know. And 4 of the last 8 have become this, and so we had to look very carefully at, am I prepared for that office? Because as a candidate, I had to do that. As a voter, you should do the same thing. And the duties of governor that's a 24/7 proposition. That's a, do you commute death sentences? Do you call up a National Guard, life or death? Again, all of the judicial appointments in the state, except for some of the trial court appointments in some of the rural counties, are all appointed by the governor. Now, these are all things that I believe that when you look at my experience, I am highly qualified and able to take on those responsibilities if that should become required of me.
Thank you very much. And in fair disclosure, I'm also an appointee from the governor for a state commission. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up, and I would like to give each of the candidates 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Well, thank you for having us here tonight. I'm not going to take the whole 2 minutes. It's an honor to be with people who actually are, I consider, the patriots of this country. People who actually come, take the time out, a valuable night, to come hear 3 people blow hot air and sit and talk so they can make an educated decision, help their friends make an educated decision. That's the essence of America. That's the essence of this great republic we live in, and of democracy. I played football here for Jesse Parker over at Mountain View High School, which he's the winningest coach in Arizona and probably the hardest coach. We didn't get water. It was back when they let football players die here in the summer. And Jess Parker he was better than a coach. He was teaching boys to become men. And he would make us memorize poems. And so I have seared in my brain from that summer heat many, many poems. And one of them is, the world is not interested in the storms you've encountered, but did you bring in the ship? And we have a lot of people who've served in government, who've done things, and we have not gotten the ship into harbor. It's time to change who we send in as public servants and to hold them accountable for getting the ship in. I was fortunate in undergrad to go to Stanford and play for Bill Walsh, the 49ers head coach who then came back and coached when I left there. He used to tell me story after story after story about Jerry Rice and how Jerry would quote poems as well. Jerry's favorite was the one that was done by Einstein, saying, if you do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result, you're crazy. There are so many things to be done at the Secretary of State level, from the permanent early voting lists to be cleaned up and make sure that we are not sending out ballots to people who have moved out of state, who are dead, or who are not citizens. From making sure when people show up at the ballot day that they are voting, that they are legal citizens, to people who have provisional ballots, making sure those are collected properly and are counted properly, to then the military. There is so much low-hanging fruit, and I would love to work on those problems if you would allow me and choose me as the next Secretary of State. Thank you for having us here tonight.
Well, again, I would just like to close with and to leave you tonight with a reminder that I believe I have a wonderful background and a wonderful experience to be able to serve you really well as Secretary of State. If you look at the two areas of law that I've really focused in on, 12 years in the legislature, we've got commerce and all the commerce chair and the different activities that we did economically related over in the House. And then in the Senate, and I'm the chair of the Elections Committee. And then you take a look at what the Secretary of State's office is, and it is a lot of things, but its main functions are managing the state's complex business filings and overseeing the state's election systems. I feel like everything I have done the last several years has tailored me to do this job very, very well for you. I'm excited about it. I think it's something that I would enjoy doing, that I would be able to serve you well. Will is absolutely correct. There are many areas that need to be cleaned up and fixed, and we have had some big successes in those areas. Biggest one coming down the pike is going to be this showing ID at the polls, which we all know is a no-brainer, and duh, we voted it in, and it can't believe that it's still in court and people are still trying to fight it. But with the new federal forms that are out there that don't have the proof of citizenship, and then you have the federal government say, well, Arizona, you have to accept these federal forms. Hopefully that'll go in our favor in the courts. But there's some really, really big issues, and these are issues that I have been working on. I think it would be an absolute honor and a privilege to serve as your next Secretary of State. So again, thank you for having us tonight. Michelle Reagan.
Last Thursday morning, the Washington Times front page had a picture of President Ronald Reagan standing at CPAC. Haven't even heard of CPAC before? Speaking at CPAC, and the headline was 50 years and going. It was 50-year anniversary of CPAC. I was honored to be invited to come and speak on the main stage of CPAC last Thursday as one of the honorees, 10 under 40, 10 conservatives under 40. I'm 39, so I just squeaked in under the, and so they chose 10 in the country as they see as up-and-coming conservative leaders for the future. I got to speak, I got to take the main stage right after Governor Christie and right before Governor Bobby Jindal and several of the other folks that you've heard on the national stage. And it was an honor, it was a privilege to be there, representing Arizona. I started off by greeting everybody from the Grand Canyon State. And one of the things though that shortly before I was coming onto the stage, Governor Christie ended his speech, and I thought it was something very important. And I believe that it's something that we need to remember as Republicans. And I believe that as leaders of the party, and as leaders, we need to keep in mind. He said, by the way, to a standing ovation when it was over, he said, "We don't get to govern unless we win elections." So yes, we have these primaries and we battle out the ideas and we put ourselves forward, but at the end of the day, August 26th is important to us, but August 27th is more important. That's the day that we all come together because we have to win the elections. How many of you know that Terry Goddard is running for this office? Now, how would you like to have him a heartbeat away from the governor's office? That would be a problem. So I would ask you for your support. By the way, many of you have said that you've signed, you can only sign one petition, but boy, do I have a deal for you. On your chairs, it would be very helpful to my campaign if you'd give me $5. Fill out that little form, give us $5. My brother's name is already filled in at the bottom. If you take it back to him, he'll sign it, and we'll be good to go. And that would be very helpful. And I ask for your support. I ask for your vote on Justin Pierce. Thank you.